The storm had been brewing all afternoon, dark clouds rolling in like an ominous curtain over the quiet mountain town. The air was sharp with the bite of winter, and the wind howled through the trees as if warning everyone to stay indoors. But Marcus Johnson didn't have that luxury. He'd spent the entire day fixing cars at the local garage, his hands stained with grease and his muscles aching from hours of hard work. Now, as he climbed into his old but reliable pickup truck, he could feel the exhaustion seeping into his bones. All he wanted was to get home, sit by the fire, and maybe steal a few moments of peace before his teenage daughter, Mia, demanded his attention for homework or dinner. The drive home usually took about 20 minutes, winding through narrow roads flanked by towering pines and rocky cliffs. It was a route Marcus knew like the back of his hand, one he'd traveled countless times since moving to this small town years ago. But tonight, the familiar path felt foreign. The snowstorm hit without mercy, thick flakes swirling violently in the headlights of his truck. Visibility dropped to almost nothing within minutes, forcing Marcus to slow down to a crawl. His windshield wipers worked furiously, but they were no match for the relentless onslaught of snow. As he navigated the treacherous road, Marcus's mind wandered. He thought about Mia waiting at home, probably glued to her phone or watching some show she wouldn't stop talking about. He smiled faintly at the thought of her teasing him later for being late again. She was growing up so fast. And though he loved seeing her mature, there were days when he wished she'd stay his little girl just a bit longer. Then his thoughts shifted to bills, rent, groceries, car repairs, and the weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. Life wasn't easy as a single dad working long hours just to keep things afloat, but Marcus never complained. He believed in doing what needed to be done, no matter how hard it got. Just as he rounded a bend in the road, something caught his eye. A blur of movement near the edge of the forest. At first, he thought it might be an animal, perhaps a deer, wandering too close to the road. But then he saw it more clearly, a person stumbling awkwardly through the deepening snow. They weren't wearing much, just a thin jacket and jeans completely inadequate for the freezing temperatures. Marcus's heart sank. Whoever this was, they wouldn't last long out here in the storm. For a moment, doubt crept in. Should he stop? Pulling over in these conditions was risky, not just for him, but for whoever was out there. What if his truck got stuck? What if the storm worsened while he tried to help? These questions buzzed in his mind, but deep down, Marcus already knew what he had to do. He couldn't leave someone out here to freeze. Not on his watch. With a deep breath, Marcus eased his truck onto the shoulder of the road, careful not to lose control on the icy surface. Grabbing a flashlight from the glove compartment, he stepped out into the biting cold. The wind slapped against his face, stealing his breath away, and the snow crunched underfoot as he made his way toward the figure. As he approached, he realized it was a man, barely conscious and shivering uncontrollably. His lips were blue and his eyes were half closed, glazed over with confusion and pain. Hey, stay with me," Marcus called out, his voice firm, despite the fear gnawing at him. He knelt beside the man, shining the flashlight on his face. "Can you hear me? What's your name?" The man mumbled something incoherent, his words lost in the roar of the storm. Marcus didn't waste another second. He looped one of the man's arms around his shoulders and hoisted him upright, practically dragging him back to the truck. Every step was a battle against the wind and snow, but Marcus refused to give up. By the time they reached the vehicle, both men were drenched and shaking, though for very different reasons. Once inside, Marcus cranked up the heater and wrapped the stranger in an emergency blanket he kept in the back seat. The man slumped against the seat, his breathing shallow and uneven. Marcus glanced at him, concern etched across his face. Whoever this guy was, he was in bad shape. Hypothermia was setting in, and every second counted. Marcus knew he couldn't take him to the hospital. Not in this weather, not with the nearest medical facility miles away. There was only one option left: bring him home. As Marcus steered the truck carefully back onto the road, he stole glances at the man beside him. Who was he? Why was he out here alone in the middle of nowhere, so unprepared for the brutal cold? These questions swirled in his mind, but Marcus pushed them aside. Right now, survival was the priority. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, determined to get them both to safety. Little did he know, this decision, to risk his own life, to save a stranger, would set off a chain of events that would change everything. The ride back to Marcus's house felt longer than usual, each mile stretching endlessly as the storm raged on outside. Inside the truck, the heat from the vents fought a losing battle against the icy chill seeping through the windows. The stranger, still, slumped in the passenger seat, was barely responsive, his body trembling even under the thin emergency blanket. Marcus kept glancing at him, worry gnawing at the edges of his mind. He didn't know much about hypothermia beyond what he'd seen in movies or heard from others, but he knew enough to understand that time was critical. Every second counted and every shiver could mean the difference between life and death. When they finally pulled into the driveway of Marcus's modest home, relief washed over him, but only for a moment. The real challenge was just beginning. The house sat tucked away at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, its wooden exterior dusted with fresh snow. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of coffee. But it was warm and safe. Qualities Marcus valued more than anything else. As he parked the truck, he turned off the engine and grabbed the flashlight again, shining it toward the front door. "All right, buddy," Marcus muttered under his breath as he opened the passenger side door. "Let's get you inside." He helped the man out of the truck, supporting most of his weight as they trudged through the knee-deep snow toward the house. Each step was slow and deliberate, the cold biting at their exposed skin despite Marcus's best efforts to shield them both. Once inside, Marcus kicked the door shut behind them and quickly flipped on the lights. The warmth of the house enveloped them instantly, though it would take some time for either of them to truly feel it. Marcus guided the stranger to the couch in the living room, laying him down gently before rushing to gather supplies. From the hall closet, he retrieved extra blankets and a space heater which he plugged in near the couch. Then he hurried to the kitchen, filling a pot with water and setting it on the stove to boil. While waiting, he rummaged through the cabinets until he found a box of instant hot cocoa mix. It wasn't much, but it was something. He remembered reading somewhere that warm liquids could help someone suffering from hypothermia. As the water heated up, Marcus returned to the living room. The man was still shivering violently, his teeth chattering loudly enough to echo in the otherwise silent house. His eyes were closed now, though Marcus noticed slight movements beneath his eyelids, suggesting he was still partially conscious. Kneeling beside him, Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, stay awake, okay?" Marcus said firmly, trying to sound calm despite the knot forming in his stomach. "You're safe now. Just hang in there." The man groaned softly, his voice weak and raspy. For a brief moment, his eyes fluttered open, revealing a pair of bloodshot, glassy orbs. Thank you," he managed to whisper before slipping back into semi-consciousness. Marcus nodded, even though the man probably couldn't see him. Yeah, just rest. I've got you." Once the water boiled, Marcus prepared 2 mugs of hot cocoa, one for the stranger and one for himself, and carried them carefully to the living room. He set his own mug aside and focused on helping the man sip the warm liquid. At first, the stranger struggled to lift his head, so Marcus held the mug steady, tilting it slowly to avoid spilling. After a few sips, the man's shivering seemed to ease slightly, though his condition remained dire. While the man rested, Marcus took the opportunity to assess the situation further. He removed the stranger's soaked shoes and socks, replacing them with a pair of dry woolen ones he kept for emergencies. He also wrapped another blanket around him, tucking it snugly to trap as much warmth as possible. As he worked, Marcus studied the man's face. There was something familiar about him, though Marcus couldn't quite place it. Maybe it was the sharp jawline or the way his brow furrowed even in unconsciousness. Whoever this guy was, he looked like he belonged somewhere, far away from here. Maybe in a corporate office or a fancy restaurant, not freezing half to death on a snowy mountain road. Finally, after what felt like hours, the man began to stir more noticeably. His breathing steadied and his eyes opened wider, though they still appeared hazy and unfocused. Marcus leaned closer, offering a reassuring smile. "You with me now?" Marcus asked gently. The man blinked a few times as if trying to process where he was. "I think so," he replied, his voice hoarse but clearer than before. "Where am I?" "My place," Marcus answered simply. "You were out in the storm. Lucky I found you when I did." The man frowned, confusion clouding his expression. "The storm? Oh God, my car, it broke down miles back. I tried walking, but—" His voice trailed off and he shook his head weakly. "I don't remember much after that." Marcus nodded, piecing together the story. "Well, you're safe. Now, that's all that matters." They sat in silence for a while, the hum of the space heater filling the room. Eventually, the man shifted slightly, wincing as he adjusted his position on the couch. "I'm Daniel, by the way," he said quietly. "Daniel Carter?" "Marcus Johnson," Marcus replied, extending a hand. When Daniel hesitated, Marcus chuckled softly. "Don't worry about shaking hands right now, just focus on getting better." Daniel offered a faint smile, gratitude flickering in his tired eyes. "Thank you, Marcus, really. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "No need to thank me," Marcus said, waving off the comment. "Anyone would have done the same." But deep down, Marcus wasn't so sure. Not everyone would have stopped on a night like this. Not with the roads as dangerous as they were. Not with the storm showing no signs of letting up. Still, he pushed those thoughts aside. What mattered now was making sure Daniel recovered fully, and that meant keeping him warm, hydrated, and comfortable. Over the next hour, Marcus stayed close, checking on Daniel frequently and ensuring he drank enough of the hot cocoa. He also called Mia, who was spending the night at a friend's house, to let her know he'd be late picking her up in the morning. She protested briefly, complaining about having to walk home in the snow, but Marcus assured her everything would be fine. By the time midnight rolled around, Daniel's condition had improved significantly. His shivering had subsided and color was gradually returning to his face. Though he was still weak and exhausted, he seemed more alert, able to hold a proper conversation. Marcus brought over a chair from the dining table and sat down across from him, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "So, Daniel," Marcus began, his tone casual but curious, "what brings you out here in the middle of nowhere? This isn't exactly tourist country." Daniel sighed, running a shaky hand through his damp hair. "Business trip," he explained. "I work for a tech company and we're looking into building a new facility in this area. My car broke down on the way back from a meeting, and I guess I underestimated how bad the weather would get." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Tech company, huh? Must be nice." Daniel chuckled weakly. "It has its perks, I suppose, but tonight reminded me how quickly things can go wrong. If it weren't for you—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. They exchanged a look, unspoken gratitude passing between them. And though neither of them realized it yet, this chance encounter was about to spark changes neither could have anticipated. Over the next few days, Daniel's strength slowly returned, and with it came a deeper connection between him and Marcus. The storm outside had finally begun to subside, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow that sparkled under the pale winter sun. Inside Marcus's cozy home, however, warmth radiated not just from the heater but also from the bond forming between the two men. What started as a simple act of kindness had blossomed into something neither of them expected. Friendship. Daniel was no stranger to luxury or privilege. He lived in a high-rise apartment in the city, wore tailored suits, and dined at restaurants where meals cost more than Marcus made in a week. Yet there was an authenticity about Marcus that drew Daniel in. For years, Daniel had been surrounded by people who spoke in polished tones and calculated every word for maximum impact. Marcus, on the other hand, said exactly what he meant, without pretense or ulterior motive. There was a refreshing honesty in his demeanor, a groundedness that Daniel admired deeply. As Daniel regained his energy, Marcus encouraged him to rest and recover fully before attempting to leave. "You're not going anywhere until you're ready," Marcus insisted one morning while pouring them both cups of coffee. "Besides, the roads are still a mess out there. No sense rushing back? Daniel smiled gratefully, holding the steaming mug in his hands. You've already done so much for me, Marcus. I can't thank you enough. Like I said before, don't worry about it, Marcus replied with a shrug. But deep down, he enjoyed having someone around to talk to. Life as a single dad often left little room for adult conversations, especially when Mia spent most of her time buried in schoolwork or glued to her phone. Having Daniel there provided a rare opportunity to share stories, laugh, and even vent about life's challenges. One evening after dinner, they sat together in the living room, the fire crackling softly in the background. Daniel leaned back, on the couch looking more relaxed than he had since arriving. Tell me about your daughter, he said, nodding toward a framed photo of Mia on the mantel. She looks like quite the character, Marcus chuckled, glancing at the picture. Oh, she is. Smart as a whip, too. Sometimes I think she knows more about life than I do. She's 16 now, which means we're right in the thick of teenage drama territory. He paused, shaking his head fondly. But she's my world. Everything I do for her. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. That must be tough, raising her on your own. It has its moments, Marcus admitted. There are days when I feel like I'm failing her, you know? Like I'm not giving her everything she deserves. But then she'll say something or do something that reminds me how far we've come, and it makes all the hard stuff worth it. The conversation shifted naturally, moving from parenting struggles to career aspirations. Marcus spoke candidly about his work as a mechanic, describing the satisfaction of fixing something broken and seeing it run smoothly again. It's honest work, he said. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And honestly, I love it. There's something rewarding about using your hands to solve problems. Daniel listened intently, his respect for Marcus growing with each passing moment. I wish more people appreciated skills like yours, he said earnestly. In my line of work, everyone's obsessed with the latest gadgets and software, but none of that matters if the machines themselves aren't running properly. Guys like you keep the world turning, Marcus laughed, waving off the compliment. Nah, I'm just a small-town guy doing what I know. You're the one making big moves, scouting locations for new facilities and all that. Sounds important. It is, in a way, Daniel admitted. But sometimes I wonder if it's meaningful. I mean, sure, creating jobs and advancing technology is great. But does it really compare to what you're doing? Providing for your family, helping strangers in need? That's real impact. Their talks continued like this over the next couple of days, delving into topics ranging from childhood memories to dreams for the future. They discovered they had more in common than they initially realized. Both had faced hardships, Marcus, as a single father trying to make ends meet, and Daniel as a corporate executive navigating the pressures of leadership. Despite their vastly different lives, they found solace in sharing their experiences and offering advice born from personal trials. On the third day, Daniel announced that he felt well enough to return to his hotel in town. Though reluctant to impose any longer, he couldn't ignore the responsibilities waiting for him. I should probably get back to reality, he said with a wry smile. My team will start wondering if I've been abducted by aliens or something. Marcus grinned, though he secretly hoped Daniel would stay a little longer. Well, if you ever need a place to crash during another snowstorm, you know where to find me. I won't forget this, Marcus, Daniel said sincerely. What you did, it saved my life, literally. I owe you. Marcus shook his head firmly. No debts here, just glad I could help. Before leaving, Daniel insisted on writing down his contact information. If you're ever in the city or if you just need anything, you call me, okay? He said, handing Marcus a business card. Seriously, consider me a friend. Marcus accepted the card, tucking it into his pocket without giving it much thought. To him, the gesture was polite but unnecessary. He didn't expect to hear from Daniel again. People like him usually moved on once their crises passed. Still, there was something genuine in Daniel's tone, a sincerity that lingered long after he drove away. In the days that followed, life returned to normal for Marcus. He resumed his routine at the garage, repaired cars, and helped Mia study. for her upcoming exams. Yet the memory of Daniel stayed with him, tucked quietly in the corners of his mind. Little did Marcus know. Their paths were destined to cross again. And when they did, it would alter the course of his life in ways he couldn't imagine. Weeks passed, and the snowstorm that had brought Marcus and Daniel together became a distant memory. Life in the small mountain town returned to its usual rhythm, quiet, predictable, and uneventful. For Marcus, this meant long days at the garage, fixing cars, followed by evenings spent helping Mia with her homework or watching old movies on the couch. It was a simple existence, one he'd grown accustomed to over the years, but deep down, there were moments when Marcus wondered if something more might be out there for him. He pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on providing for his family and keeping their lives stable. Meanwhile, Daniel had returned to his fast-paced life in the city, juggling meetings, presentations, and endless emails. Yet, despite the demands of his job, he couldn't shake the image of Marcus's modest home or the warmth of their conversations. There was something about Marcus's resilience and selflessness that stuck with him, a stark contrast to the cutthroat world Daniel inhabited daily. While others in his position might have forgotten about the mechanic who saved them during a storm, Daniel found himself thinking about Marcus often. The gratitude he felt wasn't just for being rescued, it was for the reminder of what truly mattered: kindness, integrity, and humanity. One evening, as Daniel sat in his office reviewing plans for the new facility, an idea began to take shape in his mind. The project was moving forward, and the company had finalized the decision to build in the very town where Marcus lived. It was a strategic choice. The location offered affordable land, access to resources, and a workforce eager for employment opportunities. But as Daniel pored over the details, he realized this could be more than just another business venture. This could be a chance to make a real difference, not just for the community, but for someone who had already made a difference in his life. The next morning, Daniel called a meeting with his team. After discussing logistics and timelines, he broached a topic close to his heart: hiring local talent. "We're building this facility in a small town," he explained. "These are people who deserve opportunities, and I believe we should prioritize giving back to the community that will support us." His suggestion was met with nods of agreement, though some executives expressed concerns about qualifications. Daniel leaned forward, his tone firm but respectful. "I understand the need for skilled workers, but skills can be taught. What we should look for are individuals with character, dedication, and a willingness to learn. People who embody the values we claim to stand for." With that, he proposed a name: Marcus Johnson. Daniel described Marcus's mechanical expertise, his work ethic, and his ability to solve problems under pressure. "He's exactly the kind of person we want leading our maintenance department," Daniel said confidently. "Trust me, you won't regret bringing him on board." After some discussion, the team agreed to extend an offer to Marcus, contingent on an interview. Daniel personally reached out to Marcus later that week, calling him from his office late one afternoon. When Marcus answered the phone, his voice carried the same steady calmness Daniel remembered. "Hey Marcus, it's Daniel," he began, smiling as he pictured Marcus's skeptical expression on the other end of the line. "How's everything going?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Daniel, man, I didn't expect to hear from you again. Everything's good here, just the usual grind. How about you? Surviving the corporate jungle?" Daniel laughed. "Something like that. Listen, I've got a proposition for you. Remember how I mentioned scouting locations for a new facility? Well, we decided to move forward with the project, and guess where we're building it?" "No way," Marcus said, incredulous. "Here, in this little town?" "That's right," Daniel confirmed. "And I think you'd be perfect for a leadership role in the maintenance department. We're looking for someone with your experience and problem-solving skills. Plus, your reputation around here speaks for itself." Marcus was silent for a moment, processing the unexpected offer. "Wait, hold up," he finally said. "You're serious? Me? Leading a whole department? That's a lot, man." I wouldn't have suggested it if I didn't believe you could handle it, Daniel replied earnestly. This is a big opportunity, Marcus. Not just for you, but for your family too. Think about it. Better pay, benefits, stability, and you'd still get to do what you love, just on a larger scale. Marcus hesitated. On one hand, the idea was thrilling, a chance to step into a role he never imagined for himself. But on the other hand, it felt overwhelming. Could he really manage a team, handle the responsibilities that came with such a position? What if he failed? Sensing his hesitation, Daniel softened his tone. Look, I know it's a leap, but sometimes taking risks leads to incredible things. You've got natural leadership qualities, Marcus. I saw it the moment I met you, and if anyone deserves this shot, it's you. For the rest of the day, Marcus wrestled with the decision. He talked it over with Mia, who was surprisingly enthusiastic about the idea. Dad, this is huge, she exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. Imagine what this could mean for us. Better schools, maybe even college funds. You'd crush it. I know you would. Her excitement gave him pause. Maybe this was the push he needed to break free from the limitations he'd placed on himself. That night, after much deliberation, Marcus called Daniel back. All right, he said, his voice tinged with nervous determination. Let's do it. But if I mess up, you're going to have to bail me out, okay? Daniel laughed warmly. Deal. Welcome aboard, Marcus. Over the following weeks, preparations for the new role consumed Marcus's attention. He attended training, sessions organized by the company, learning everything from managerial techniques to advanced machinery diagnostics. At first, the transition felt daunting. There were days when he doubted whether he belonged in such a high-stakes environment. But with each passing week, his confidence grew. The people around him noticed his dedication and quickly warmed to his approachable nature. Workers respected his hands-on style and appreciated how he treated everyone fairly, regardless of rank or experience. As the facility began to take shape, so did Marcus's new life. He earned a salary that allowed him to breathe easier, eliminating the constant stress of making ends meet. For the first time in years, he could envision a future where Mia went to college without drowning in debt. More importantly, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, a belief that his hard work wasn't just sustaining his family, but contributing to something greater. Through it all, Daniel remained a steadfast ally, checking in regularly to ensure Marcus felt supported. Their friendship deepened, transcending the boundaries of their vastly different worlds. To Marcus, Daniel wasn't just a wealthy executive anymore. He was proof that acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one anticipated. Little did either of them realize, however, that the journey was far from over. The bond they forged during that snowy night had planted seeds of change, not just in their individual lives but in the entire community. And as the facility opened its doors, welcoming employees and sparking economic growth, Marcus stood at the center of it all, a testament to the power of second chances and the unexpected paths life could take. Years passed, and the small mountain town transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The new facility became a cornerstone of the community, breathing life into local businesses and creating jobs for residents who had once struggled to make ends meet. What started as a corporate project turned into something far more meaningful, a beacon of hope for families like Marcus's, who now saw possibilities where there had once been only limitations. And at the heart of it all was Marcus Johnson, a man whose journey from mechanic to maintenance supervisor symbolized resilience, determination, and the power of human connection. Marcus thrived in his role, proving that Daniel's faith in him wasn't misplaced. His leadership style was unique. He didn't rely on authority or intimidation, but instead led with empathy and understanding. Workers respected him because he treated them as equals, rolling up his sleeves alongside them when things got tough. He never forgot what it felt like to be on the other side of hardship, and that awareness shaped how he approached every challenge. Under his guidance, the maintenance department ran smoothly, earning praise not just from Daniel but from executives across the company. But success wasn't measured solely by professional achievements. For Marcus, the true reward came in watching Mia grow into a confident young woman. With financial stability finally within reach, she pursued her dreams without fear. She graduated high school at the top of her class, earning scholarships to attend a prestigious university. On the day she left for college, Marcus stood on the porch of their home, waving until her car disappeared down the road. Tears welled in his eyes, not out of sadness, but pride. He'd done it. Against all odds, he'd given her the future she deserved. Meanwhile, Daniel remained a constant presence in Marcus's life. Their friendship evolved beyond gratitude and mutual respect. They became brothers in spirit, sharing laughter, advice, and occasional debates over football games. Daniel often visited the town, using any excuse to check on the facility while spending time with Marcus and his family. During one such visit, he brought along his wife and 2 teenage sons, introducing them to the world that had changed his perspective so profoundly. Over barbecues and late-night conversations, their families bonded, bridging the gap between their vastly different lives. One crisp autumn evening, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze, Marcus found himself standing outside the facility. It was nearing completion, its sleek design blending seamlessly with the rugged landscape. Workers bustled about, putting the finishing touches on equipment and testing systems. The hum of activity filled the air, a stark contrast to the quiet desperation that had once defined this place. As Marcus gazed at the sprawling building, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come, and how much one decision had altered the course of his life. "You look deep in thought," a familiar voice said behind him. Turning, Marcus saw Daniel approaching, bundled in a coat despite the mild weather. A grin spread across Marcus's face as he extended a hand which Daniel shook warmly. "Just thinking about everything," Marcus admitted, gesturing toward the facility. "Never thought I'd see something like this here. Never thought I'd be part of it either." Daniel nodded, following Marcus's gaze. "It's amazing, isn't it? But none of this would have happened without you. You saved my life that night, Marcus. And in doing so, you opened doors for yourself and everyone around you." Marcus chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I don't know about all that. I was just trying to do the right thing." "And that's exactly why you're remarkable," Daniel replied earnestly. "Not everyone would have stopped on a night like that. Most people would have kept driving, told themselves someone else would help, but you didn't. That says everything about who you are." The words lingered between them, carried away by the cool wind. Marcus looked back at the facility, then at the town beyond, the shops bustling with customers, the schools filled with children dreaming big, the streets alive with energy. He realized Daniel was right. Stopping that night hadn't just saved a stranger. It had set off a chain reaction that touched countless lives, including his own. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace. Life hadn't always been kind to him, but he'd learned to adapt, to persevere, and to find joy even in the hardest moments. Now, standing beside a friend who had become family, surrounded by evidence of his hard work and sacrifices, he knew he'd created something lasting. The facility officially opened a few weeks later, drawing crowds from neighboring towns. Local leaders gave speeches thanking the company for its investment. Employees beamed with pride knowing they were part of something transformative. And when Marcus took the stage to share a few words, the audience erupted in applause. He spoke briefly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This place represents more than just jobs or technology," he said, looking out at the sea of faces. "It's proof that change is possible when we work together, when we care for each other. None of us got here alone. We built this together. So let's keep going. Let's keep making our community stronger, one step at a time." As he stepped down, Daniel clapped louder than anyone, his eyes shining with admiration. Later, during the celebration, he pulled Marcus aside. "You're an inspiration, you know that?" he said, raising a glass of sparkling cider. "To you, Marcus. To second chances and to the incredible things they can lead to." Marcus raised his own glass, smiling. To second chances, and to friends who believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. They drank to that, their laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air. Around them, the town buzzed with newfound vitality, a testament to the ripple effects of kindness, courage, and trust. Marcus knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he also knew he wasn't walking it alone. Together, he and Daniel had proven that even in the darkest storms, light could break through, and when it did, it could illuminate paths no one ever expected to find.